The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Park Do-yeon stepped onto the orbital station called Harmony's Edge. He carried only one bag over his shoulder. Everything he owned for the next 6 months fit inside it. The station was huge, bigger than anything he had ever seen. Lights of different colors glowed from every direction. Strange sounds filled the air. Beings of all shapes and sizes walked past him without a second look. Do-hyun was 28 years old. He had black hair, average height, and a calm face that rarely showed what he was feeling inside. Back on Earth, he had worked as a translator for 3 years before the government picked him for this job. Cultural liaison, they called it, a fancy title for a simple job. He was here to represent humanity, to show the galaxy that Earth deserved a place among the stars. The problem was simple. Nobody in the galaxy cared about humans. Earth had only made contact with alien species 5 years ago. In galactic terms, humans were babies. They had no advanced technology to offer, no rare resources, no military power. Most species looked at humans the same way humans might look at ants. Interesting, perhaps, but not important. Do-hyun knew all this. He had accepted it. His job was not to change minds overnight. His job was to be patient, to be kind, and to show that humans were worth knowing. It would take time. He had plenty of that. He followed the directions on his tablet to the shared quarters. The station housed thousands of diplomats from hundreds of species. Space was limited. So many delegations shared living areas. Do-hyun had been assigned to stay with the Velari delegation. He knew a little about them. The Velari were an old species, respected across the galaxy for their art, music, and scholarship. They lived for nearly 500 years. Their skin was silver gray, and their eyes glowed in soft colors. They were beautiful in a way that seemed almost unreal. Do-hyun reached the door and pressed his hand to the scanner. The door slid open. Inside, 4 women sat in the common area. They all had silver skin and tall, slim bodies. Their hair flowed like silk in shades of white and pale blue. When they turned to look at him, their glowing eyes showed no warmth, only surprise. And then, quickly, something worse: disgust. The eldest one spoke first. She looked about 30 in human terms, though she was probably much older. Her eyes were pale gold and her voice was cold. So, they actually sent a human. Do-hyun bowed politely, the way he would greet anyone deserving respect. Good evening. My name is Park Do-hyun. I will be staying in these quarters for the diplomatic session. Thank you for having me. The second sister leaned toward the third and whispered something. The third one, younger than the first two, covered her mouth and laughed. It was a pretty sound, like bells. But the meaning behind it was ugly. They were laughing at him. Do-hyun kept his face calm. He had expected this. He walked to the small room that had been assigned to him and set down his bag. The room was tiny, barely enough space for a bed and a small desk. But it was clean, and it was his. That was enough. When he came back out, the 4 sisters were still watching him. The eldest one spoke again. I am Yuri. These are my sisters, Hana, Mina, and Sora. She pointed to each one in turn. Hana was the second eldest, with eyes like blue ice. Mina was the one who had laughed, her eyes a soft pink. And Sora, the youngest, sat slightly apart from the others. Her eyes were deep violet, and unlike her sisters, she was not smiling. I hope we can get along well, Do-hyun said. Yuri's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. We shall see. Humans are new to all this. Try not to embarrass yourself, Hana added, or us. We have a reputation to maintain. Mina giggled again. Can you imagine? A human at the High Council reception. They'll think we're running a zoo. Do-hyun said nothing. He simply nodded and went to the small kitchen area to make himself some tea. His hands were steady as he worked. Inside, he felt the sting of their words, but he did not let it show. Showing weakness would only make things worse. As the water heated, he noticed Sora watching him. Unlike her sisters, she had not said anything cruel. She had not laughed. Her violet eyes simply observed, quiet and thoughtful. When their eyes met, she looked away quickly. Do-hyun finished making his tea and sat at the small table near the window. Outside, stars stretched across the endless black. Somewhere out there was Earth, his home, his family, his people. They were counting on him to do this job well. He would not let them down. The sisters returned to their conversation, speaking in their own language now. They assumed he could not understand. Most humans could not speak Valari. The language was complex, full of sounds that human throats struggled to make. But Do-hyun had spent 2 years studying it before coming here. He understood every word. "He's so plain," Hana said. "No colors, no patterns, just brown eyes and black hair. Boring." "And so short," Mina added. "He barely reaches my shoulder." "They only live 80 years, Yuri said with a sigh. "What can they possibly accomplish in such little time? No wonder they haven't achieved anything important." Do-hyun sipped his tea and watched the stars. He let their words flow past him like water around a stone. Only Sora remained silent. At one point, she glanced at him again, and for just a moment, something like curiosity flickered in her violet eyes. Then she looked away and said nothing. That night, Do-hyun lay in his small bed and stared at the ceiling. The station hummed softly around him. In the next room, he could hear the sisters talking and laughing. He was alone here, far from everyone he loved, surrounded by people who saw him as nothing. But he had faced hard times before. Life on Earth had not been easy. He had grown up poor, worked his way through school, learned languages because books were cheaper than travel. Every step of his life had been a fight. This was just another fight. He closed his eyes and made himself a promise. He would be patient. He would be kind. He would show them what humans were made of, not through words but through actions. Tomorrow he would begin. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and bright, and the universe continued on, indifferent to the small human who had just arrived. But Do-hyun had learned long ago that the universe did not give gifts. You had to earn everything yourself. He was ready to earn his place. The first week passed slowly. Each day felt like a small battle. And each night Do-hyun lay in bed, wondering if he was making any progress at all. The sisters continued to treat him like an unwanted guest in their home. They did not include him in their conversations. They did not invite him to meals. When he entered a room, they often fell silent or switched to their own language, speaking words they thought he could not understand. But Do-hyun understood everything. "He was in the bathroom for 20 minutes this morning," Hana complained one evening. "Humans need so much maintenance. Eating, sleeping, washing. It's exhausting just watching him." "I heard they sweat," Mina said, wrinkling her nose. "Through their skin. Can you imagine? How primitive." "The smell must be terrible," Yuri agreed. "I'm glad his room is far from mine." Do-hyun sat at the kitchen table, reading a report on his tablet. He did not react. He had learned long ago that reacting to insults only encouraged more of them. Silence was his shield, but the words still hurt. Late at night, alone in his room, he sometimes wondered if coming here had been a mistake. Maybe the other species were right. Maybe humans really were too primitive, too weak, too short-lived to matter in the grand scheme of things. Then he would think of his mother back on Earth. She had worked 2 jobs to raise him after his father died. She had never complained, never given up, never stopped believing that her son would do great things someday. He could not disappoint her. He would not. So he developed a routine. Every morning he woke before the sisters. He went to the small kitchen and prepared breakfast, not just for himself but for everyone. He made simple Korean dishes: rice porridge with vegetables, bean sprout soup, egg rolls with green onions. He set the food out on the table with clean bowls and chopsticks. Then he ate his own portion and left before the sisters woke up. The first few days they ignored the food. Yuri called it strange human cooking and ordered meals from the station's food service instead. Hana and Mina followed her lead. Only the bowls Do-hyun had used showed any sign of being touched. But on the 5th morning, something changed. Do-hyun was cleaning up when Sora entered the kitchen. She moved quietly like a ghost, and he did not notice her until she spoke. "What is this?" He turned. She was pointing at the pot of soup still warming on the small heater. "Bean sprout soup," he said. "It's a common breakfast in my country. Would you like to try some?" Sora hesitated. She looked toward the hallway as if checking whether her sisters were watching. Then she nodded. Do-hyun filled a bowl and handed it to her. She took it carefully as if it might bite her and brought it to her lips. She took a small sip. Her violet eyes widened. "It's warm," she said. Do-hyun smiled. "Most good things are." Sora looked at him for a long moment. Something in her expression shifted. though he could not say exactly what. Then she nodded once, finished the soup, and left without another word. It was a small thing, but to Do-hyun, it felt like a tiny crack in a very thick wall. The days continued. The diplomatic sessions began, and Do-hyun attended them as Earth's representative. He sat in the back of the great chamber, where the minor species were placed. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, he was polite, careful and brief. He asked questions. He took notes. He learned. The other species mostly ignored him. A few were curious enough to ask him questions about Earth. What was it like? Did humans really fight wars among themselves? Was it true they had almost destroyed their own planet? Do-hyun answered honestly. Yes, humans had made many mistakes, but they were learning. They were trying to be better. Some listeners seemed impressed by his honesty. Others just shook their heads and walked away. At night, Do-hyun returned to the quarters and endured more mockery from the sisters. But he noticed that Sora no longer laughed with them. She stayed quiet, watching him with those violet eyes that seemed to see more than she let on. Then came the night everything changed. A malfunction in the station's heating system caused the temperature to drop sharply in their section. The Valari came from a warm world. Their bodies were not built for cold. Within hours, all four sisters were shivering, wrapped in thin blankets that did little to help. Do-hyun felt the cold too, but it did not bother him as much. Humans had evolved in a world of changing seasons. His ancestors had survived ice ages. A little cold was uncomfortable, but not dangerous. He went to his room and gathered all his thermal blankets. He had brought 3 standard issue for human travelers. He carried them to the common area where the sisters huddled together. Here, he said, holding out the blankets. These will help. Yuri looked up at him, her golden eyes narrowed with suspicion. What do you want in return? Nothing, Do-hyun said. You're cold, I have blankets. It's simple. We don't need your charity, Hana said, though her teeth were chattering. Do-hyun set the blankets down on the table. They're here if you change your mind. He returned to his room and sat on his bed, wrapping his arms around himself. The cold seeped through the walls. He could see his breath forming small clouds in the air. It would be a long night. An hour later, he heard movement outside his door. He looked up to see Sora standing there, wrapped in one of his blankets. In her hands, she held another blanket, still folded. My sisters took the other 2, she said quietly. But you should have this one back. You need it. Do-hyun shook his head. Keep it. I'll be fine. You're shivering. I've been colder. It was true. He remembered winters in his childhood home. When they could not afford proper heating, he had survived those nights. He would survive this one. Sora stood in the doorway, uncertain. Then she did something unexpected. She entered his room, sat down on the edge of his bed, and wrapped the blanket around both of them. Then we'll share, she said. Do-hyun blinked in surprise. Your sisters. My sisters are warm now because of you. Sora's voice was firm. They won't thank you. They're too proud. But I'm not. So thank you, Park Do-hyun. For the soup, for the blankets, for not hating us even though we've given you every reason to. Do-hyun did not know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt true. I don't hate anyone. Life is too short for that. Sora smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile. It transformed her face, making her seem younger, warmer, more real. 80 years, she said softly. That's all you have, and yet you waste none of it on anger. Perhaps humans are not as primitive as we thought. They sat together in the cold, sharing warmth, and for the first time since arriving on the station, Do-hyun did not feel alone. Outside, the stars continued their endless burning, and somewhere in the vast machinery of the station, workers rushed to fix the heating system. But in that small room, a human and a Valari sat side by side, and something new began to grow between them. Something that felt like the beginning of understanding. 2 weeks had passed since the night of the cold. Things had changed in the quarters, though the change was small and quiet. Yuri still looked at Do-hyun with suspicion. Hana still made comments under her breath. Mina still giggled at his expense. But there was less cruelty in their words now. They had accepted his blankets. They had used them. That fact hung in the air between them, unspoken but present, and Sora had changed the most. She no longer avoided him. In the mornings, she joined him in the kitchen and ate the breakfast he prepared. They did not talk much, but the silence between them was comfortable now, like the silence between old friends. Sometimes she asked him about Earth. What did the oceans look like? Were the forests really green? Did humans truly have animals as companions? Do-yun answered all her questions. He told her about the sea near his hometown, how it changed colors with the seasons. He described the mountains he had hiked as a young man, the smell of pine trees and fresh air. He explained how his family had kept a small dog named Bori, who would sleep at his feet every night. Sora listened with wonder in her violet eyes. Her world, she explained, had no oceans, no forests. The Valari had built their civilization on a planet of endless plains and gentle hills. Water was precious there, collected from underground rivers and carefully rationed. The idea of a world covered in water amazed her. I would like to see it someday, she said one morning. Your Earth. Maybe you will, Do-hyun replied. Stranger things have happened. She smiled at that, and he felt something warm spread through his chest. He was not sure what it meant. He only knew that he looked forward to these mornings more than anything else. But the peace was not to last. The diplomatic reception was held in the station's grand hall. Hundreds of species gathered there, dressed in their finest clothes and ornaments. The hall was vast, with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. Lights floated in the air like captured stars. Music played from somewhere, strange melodies that seemed to have no source. Do-hyun wore his best suit, the one he had saved for important occasions. It was simple and black, nothing compared to the elaborate robes and glittering jewels worn by other delegates. But he stood straight and kept his chin up. He represented Earth. He would not be ashamed. The sisters attended as well. They wore flowing gowns of silver and white, their hair arranged in complex patterns. Even Do-hyun had to admit they looked beautiful. Yuri moved through the crowd like a queen, greeting other delegates with practiced grace. Hana and Mina stayed close to her, following her lead. Sora walked slightly behind them. At one point, she caught Do-hyun's eye across the room and gave him a small nod. He nodded back. The reception continued without incident for the first hour. Do-hyun spoke with a few delegates who were curious about humans. He answered their questions politely, drank a glass of something that tasted like sweet water, and watched the crowd. He was learning to read the politics of the station, which species were allies, which were rivals, who held real power and who only pretended to. Then he noticed something wrong. Hana had separated from her sisters. She stood near one of the side corridors, and she was not alone. A massive figure loomed over her, blocking her path. The figure belonged to a species Do-hyun recognized from his studies, the Korvax. They were warriors, fierce and proud, known for their strength and their quick tempers. This one was larger than most, covered in dark green scales, with 4 arms and a face full of sharp teeth. Hana looked frightened. Her usual confidence was gone. She was pressed against the wall, trying to make herself small. Do-hyun moved without thinking. He crossed the hall quickly, weaving through the crowd. By the time he reached the corridor, he could hear the Korvax speaking. Its voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. Your family owes mine a debt, the Korvax growled. 300 years ago, your ancestors broke a treaty. We have not forgotten. That was centuries ago, Hana said, her voice shaking. I had nothing to do with it. Please let me pass. Debts must be paid. The Korvax leaned closer. Perhaps you will pay it now. In blood. Do-hyun stepped between them. The Korvax looked down at him with surprise, then amusement. Do-hyun barely reached the creature's chest. He was small, soft, and obviously no threat at all. Move, little human, the Korvax said. This does not concern you. Do-hyun did not move. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Every instinct told him to run. The Korvax could crush him with one hand. This was madness. But he thought of Hana behind him, frightened and alone. He thought of his mother who had taught him that strength was not about muscles or weapons. Strength was about standing up when it mattered, even when you were afraid. She is under Earth's protection right now, Do-hyun said. His voice came out steady, which surprised even him. Touch her, and you create an incident with 2 species instead of 1. Is an old debt worth that much trouble? The Korvax stared at him. Then it laughed, a terrible sound that echoed through the corridor. Earth's protection? Earth has no power here. You have no ships, no weapons, no warriors. What can you possibly do to stop me? Do-Yun met the creature's eyes. He did not blink. He did not look away. I don't know, he admitted, but you'll have to kill me to find out. And I promise you, whatever happens, I won't make it easy. The Korvax studied him. Something shifted in its expression. It was looking at Do-Hyun differently now, not with amusement, but with something closer to curiosity, maybe even respect. You're serious, the Korvax said slowly. You would die for this female who has treated you with nothing but contempt. Yes, Do-Hyun said simply. A long moment passed. The noise of the reception seemed very far away. Do-Hyun could hear his own breathing, fast and shallow. He could feel Hana trembling behind him. Finally, the Korvax stepped back. Humans, it muttered. I have heard stories. Your kind does not know when to surrender. You keep fighting when you should die. Perhaps the stories are true. Perhaps they are, Do-Hyun said. The Korvax gave him one last look, something almost like a smile crossing its terrible face. Then it turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Do-Hyun let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. His legs felt weak. His hands were shaking. But he had done it. He had stood his ground. Behind him, Hana made a small sound. He turned to find her staring at him with wide eyes. For once there was no mockery in them, only shock. Why? She whispered. Why did you do that? Do-Hyun thought about it for a moment. Then he shrugged. Because it was right. He offered her his arm. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Together, they walked back to rejoin her sisters. That night in their quarters, the atmosphere was different. Yuri sat across from Do-Hyun, her golden eyes studying him with new intensity. Hana told us what happened, she said. You could have been killed. Yes, Do-Hyun agreed, but you did it anyway. For her, for someone who has been cruel to you. Do-Hyun met her gaze. Being kind isn't something you earn, it's something you give. Yuri was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. I think I misjudged you, Park Do-Hyun. I think I misjudged your entire species. Do-Hyun smiled. That's all right. We're used to it. Across the room, Sora watched him with shining violet eyes. And when she smiled at him, it felt like the stars themselves were smiling too. After the incident with the Korvax, things changed in ways Do-Hyun had not expected. Hana no longer made cruel comments about him. Instead, she sometimes nodded at him when they passed in the hallway, a small gesture that meant more than any words could say. Mina still giggled occasionally, but now her laughter seemed more nervous than mocking. Even Yuri had softened. She no longer treated him like an insect that had wandered into her home. She treated him like a guest. Perhaps not a welcome one, but a guest nonetheless. And Sora. Sora was different in ways he could not quite describe. She sought him out now. When he sat reading in the common area, she would join him, asking questions about the book in his hands or the music playing through his earbuds. When he cooked breakfast, she helped, learning to chop vegetables and stir soup the way humans did. Their conversations grew longer and deeper. She told him about her childhood on the Valari homeworld, about her dreams of traveling the galaxy and seeing all its wonders. He told her about Earth, about his mother and his friends, about the small apartment where he had grown up and the stars he had watched from his window as a boy. You looked at the same stars we did, Sora said one evening, her voice full of wonder. All those years before we even knew each other existed, we were looking at the same lights. Maybe that's how it works, Do-Hyun replied. Maybe the stars connect us all, even before we meet. Sora smiled. That smile had become the brightest part of his days. But happiness, he had learned, never lasted long. Trouble always found a way to return. It started with another malfunction. This time, the sleeping pod system failed. The quarters had 5 sleeping pods, one for each person. They were standard Valari design, oval chambers that regulated temperature and filtered air for the perfect night's rest. But something in the station's power grid had shorted out, and now only 3 of the pods were working. 5 people, 3 beds. The sisters gathered in the common area to discuss the problem. Do-hyun stood near the window, staying out of their way. He already knew how this would end. He was the outsider, the human, the least important person in the room. He would sleep on the floor. It was the obvious solution. Yuri spoke first. We'll have to share. Hana and Mina, you take one pod. I'll take another alone. Sora, you can have the third. And the human? Hana asked, glancing at Do-hyun. Yuri hesitated. She did not want to say it out loud, but the implication was clear. The floor, the couch, anywhere but in a proper bed. Before anyone could speak, Sora stepped forward. I'll share a bed with the human tonight. The room went silent. Yuri stared at her youngest sister as if she had just announced she was moving to a black hole. Hana's mouth fell open. Mina made a strange squeaking sound, like a small animal that had been stepped on. Sora, Yuri said slowly, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. But he's a human. Hana said the word like it was a disease. Yes, he is. Sora's voice was calm but firm. He's also the person who gave us his blankets when we were freezing. He's the person who stood between Hana and a Korvax warrior, knowing he could be killed. He's been nothing but kind to us since he arrived, even though we've treated him terribly. She turned to look at Do-hyun, and there was something fierce in her violet eyes. I'm not afraid of him. I'm ashamed of us. No one spoke. The silence stretched on, heavy and uncomfortable. Do-hyun wanted to say something, to refuse to offer to sleep on the floor like he had planned, but the words would not come. Sora was standing up for him, and to refuse her now would be to reject that gift. Yuri finally let out a long breath. Sora, this is highly inappropriate. If anyone finds out, then let them find out. Sora lifted her chin. I'm tired of pretending that status and species matter more than character. Park Do-hyun has more honor than most nobles I've met at this station. If my sisters can't see that, then perhaps they need to look harder. Another long silence. Then, to everyone's surprise, Hana spoke. She's right. All eyes turned to her. Hana's face was uncomfortable, almost pained, like she was forcing out words she did not want to say. He saved me. That Korvax would have hurt me, maybe killed me, and he stepped in front of it without thinking. He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't even mention it afterward. She looked at Do-hyun directly for the first time since that night. I never thanked you, she said quietly. I should have, so thank you. Do-hyun nodded. You're welcome. Mina shifted nervously. She seemed to want to say something too. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just nodded, a small movement that said more than any speech could. Yuri looked around at her sisters, then back at Do-hyun. Her expression was unreadable. Finally, she sighed. Fine. Do what you want, Sora. But if this causes problems, you'll deal with them yourself. I will, Sora said. That night, Do-hyun found himself climbing into a sleeping pod beside Sora. The pod was designed for one Valari, which meant two people fit only if they stayed close together. Very close. He lay on his back, stiff and uncertain, trying to take up as little space as possible. Relax, Sora said softly. I don't bite. I know, it's just... He struggled to find the right words. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. You don't. She turned to face him, her violet eyes glowing softly in the dim light of the pod. You never have. That's what my sisters could never understand. You're not a threat, Do-hyun. You're something much more dangerous. What's that? You're kind. Truly kind. Without expecting anything in return. She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth like silk. Do you know how rare that is? In all my years, in all my travels, I've never met anyone like you. Do-hyun felt his heart beating faster. He was not sure what was happening between them, but he knew it was important. Maybe the most important thing that had ever happened to him. Sora, he said carefully, I'm only going to be here for a few more months, and after that, I'll go back to Earth. We live in different worlds, different lifespans, different everything. I don't want you to what? Feel something for you? She smiled at me, and it was sad and beautiful at the same time. It's too late for that. But your family, your people, my family is learning to see you clearly. My people will learn too in time. And as for lifespans, she squeezed his hand. You taught me something, Do-hyun. You taught me that a short life lived well is worth more than a long life wasted on pride and cruelty. I would rather have a few years with someone who matters than centuries with someone who doesn't. Dohyun did not know what to say, so he did the only thing that felt right. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. Thank you, he whispered, for seeing me. Thank you for being worth seeing. They lay together in the darkness, hands intertwined, and for the first time since arriving at the station, Dohyun felt like he truly belonged somewhere. Outside the pod, the station hummed its endless song. The stars burned in the void, and somewhere in the quarters, three sisters lay in their own pods, thinking about the human who had changed everything they thought they knew. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, for this one perfect moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Word spread through the station like fire through dry grass. A human had captured the heart of a Valari noble daughter. The youngest of the four sisters, known for her beauty and her quiet wisdom, had chosen to stand beside a primitive, short-lived creature from a backwater planet. The gossip traveled from corridor to corridor, from species to species, growing stranger and more exaggerated with each telling. Some found it amusing, others found it disgusting, and a few, a dangerous few, found it offensive. Doyun noticed the changes in how others looked at him. The curious glances had turned into hostile stares. Delegates who had once been willing to speak with him now turned away when he approached. Whispers followed him wherever he went. He heard fragments of conversations, harsh words spoken in languages he understood but pretended not to. Corrupting an innocent noble, humans think they can take whatever they want. Someone should teach him his place. He tried not to let it bother him. He had faced worse back on Earth. Prejudice was the same everywhere, he had learned. It wore different faces, spoke different languages, but underneath it was always the same ugly thing. Fear of the different, hatred of the other. Sora stayed close to him during this time. Her presence was a comfort, but it also made things worse. Every time they were seen together, the whispers grew louder. Her sisters tried to convince her to keep her distance, at least in public, but she refused. I will not hide, she said firmly. I'm not ashamed of him, and I won't pretend to be. Doyun loved her for that courage, but he also feared it would bring trouble. The trouble came 3 days later. He was walking through one of the station's observation decks when he heard heavy footsteps behind him. He turned to find three figures blocking his path. They were Theron, a warrior species known throughout the galaxy for their strength and their code of honor. They were massive, each one standing nearly 7 feet tall, with thick gray skin and 4 arms lined with muscle. Their faces were hard and serious, and they wore ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights. The largest one stepped forward. His name, Doyun would later learn, was Gorath. He was a respected warrior, a champion of his people, and he was looking at Doyun the way a wolf might look at a rabbit. You are the human, Gorath said. It was not a question. Doyun stood his ground. I am. You have been keeping company with the Valari female, the young one, Sora. I have. Gorath's eyes narrowed. You have corrupted her, turned her against her own kind, made her forget her station and her duty. I've done nothing of the sort. Dohyun kept his voice calm. Sora makes her own choices. She always has. Lies. Gorath took another step forward. You are a disease, human, a contamination. Your species does not belong among the stars. You should have stayed on your little blue rock and rotted there. Dohyun said nothing. He had heard worse. He could endure words, but Gorath was not finished. I challenge you, the Theron said formally. According to the old laws, I challenge you to combat. You have insulted the honor of noble families across this station. The penalty for refusing is disgrace. Your species will be stripped of its seat at the diplomatic table. Earth will be declared unworthy of galactic society. Dohyun felt his blood run cold. He had studied the old laws. They were ancient traditions, rarely invoked in modern times, but still legally binding. A challenge like this could not be refused without serious consequences. If he backed down, humanity would pay the price. And if I accept? He asked. Gorath smiled. It was not a kind expression. Then we fight, to the yield or to the death. If you win, the charges against you are dropped. If you lose, you die. and your species is shamed regardless. Do-hyun understood what was happening. This was a trap. There was no winning. The Theron were among the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. Gorath himself was a champion, undefeated in formal combat. Fighting him was suicide, but refusing was worse. I accept, Do-hyun said. Gorath blinked in surprise. He had clearly expected the human to beg, to make excuses, to find some way to escape. Instead, this small, fragile creature had looked him in the eye and accepted death. You are brave, Gorath admitted. Stupid, but brave. The duel will take place in 3 days. Prepare yourself, human. It will be the last thing you ever do. The Theron turned and walked away, their heavy footsteps echoing through the corridor. Do-hyun stood alone watching them go. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding, but his decision was made. That night, he told Sora and her sisters what had happened. The reaction was immediate. You can't do this, Yuri said, her voice sharp with anger. It's madness. Gorath will kill you. Probably, Do-hyun agreed. Then why? Hana demanded. Why accept? There must be another way. There isn't. If I refuse, Earth loses everything we've worked for. Every human who comes after me will be marked as a coward. I won't do that to my people. Mina was crying softly. Even she, who had mocked him so often, seemed genuinely upset. This isn't fair, she whispered. You don't deserve this. Sora had not spoken. She sat in the corner, her violet eyes fixed on Do-hyun, her face pale and still. Sora, Yuri said gently, say something. Slowly, Sora stood and walked to Do-hyun. She stood before him, close enough to touch, and looked up into his eyes. I won't ask you not to fight, she said quietly. I know you have to do this. I understand. Sora, but I want you to know something. She took his hand in both of hers. Whatever happens, I don't regret anything. Meeting you, knowing you, loving you. If these are the last days we have together, I want to spend every moment at your side. Do-hyun felt tears burning in his eyes. He blinked them back. I'm scared, he admitted. It was the first time he had said it out loud. I know, she squeezed his hand. But you taught me something, remember? Strength isn't about not being afraid. It's about standing up anyway. He pulled her close and held her tight. Around them, the sisters watched in silence. Yuri's eyes were wet. Hana looked away. Mina sobbed quietly into her hands. I'll fight, Do-hyun said into Sora's hair. I'll fight with everything I have. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find a way to survive. Then I'll watch you fight, Sora whispered. I'll be there. No matter what happens, you won't be alone. They held each other for a long time. Two small figures against the endless dark of space. The stars burned on, indifferent to their pain, their fear, their love. In 3 days, Do-hyun would face a monster. But for now, for this moment, he had something worth fighting for. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all. The arena was filled with beings from across the galaxy. They packed the seats that rose in great circles around the central fighting floor, their bodies a rainbow of colors and shapes. Some had come out of curiosity, others had come for entertainment. Most had come because they expected to see a human die, and that was something new and interesting. Do-hyun stood at the edge of the arena, looking out at the crowd. Thousands of eyes stared back at him. Some were hostile, some were pitying. A few, very few, held something like hope. He wore simple clothes, a white shirt, loose black pants, soft shoes that gripped the floor well. He had no armor, no weapons, nothing but the body he had been born with. Across the arena, Gorath waited. The Theron champion looked even more massive here, under the bright lights. His gray skin gleamed like stone. His 4 arms hung at his sides, each one thick with muscle. He wore ceremonial armor on his chest and shoulders, but his arms were bare, ready for combat. In his upper hands, he held twin curved blades, traditional Theron weapons designed to cut through almost anything. An official stepped forward and announced the terms of the duel. Fight until yield or death. No outside interference. The winner would be declared honorable. The loser would face disgrace. The official turned to Do-hyun. Human, you may choose your weapons. A table stood nearby, covered with an array of weapons suited to different species. blades, clubs, energy weapons, even a few things Do-hyun did not recognize. He walked to the table and looked at them carefully. Then he turned away. "I'll fight the human way," he announced loud enough for the crowd to hear. He stripped off his shirt and dropped it to the floor. Then he raised his bare fists. The crowd went silent. Even Gorath looked confused. "You refuse weapons?" the official asked, uncertain. "I do. This is how my ancestors fought. This is how I'll fight." Murmurs spread through the arena. Some laughed. Others looked disturbed. A few leaned forward, suddenly interested in a way they had not been before. Gorath shook his head slowly. "You truly are mad, human. But if you wish to die faster, I will not stop you." The official retreated. A horn sounded, deep and resonant, echoing through the arena. The fight began. Gorath charged. For such a large creature, he moved terrifyingly fast. His blades sliced through the air, cutting arcs of silver light. Any one of those strikes would kill Do-hyun instantly. But Do-hyun was not there. He ducked under the first blade, rolled away from the second, and came up on Gorath's left side. His fist connected with the Theron's ribs, a quick jab that probably felt like nothing more than a tap. Then he was moving again, dancing away before Gorath could turn. The crowd gasped. Gorath spun, surprise flickering across his stony face. "You're fast for an insect!" He attacked again, faster this time, his forearms working in deadly coordination. Blade after blade came at Do-hyun, each one seeking his blood. And again Do-hyun dodged. He was not stronger than Gorath. He was not tougher. But he was quick and he was smart. And he had studied movement his entire life. Back on Earth, Do-hyun had practiced martial arts since he was a child. Not because he liked fighting, but because his neighborhood had been rough and he needed to survive. He had learned that the key to beating a stronger opponent was never to let them hit you. Move, adapt, wait for the opening. So that was what he did. He moved like water, flowing around Gorath's attacks. He took hits when he had to, absorbing blows that sent pain screaming through his body. But he kept moving. He kept standing. He refused to fall. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. The crowd had fallen silent now, watching with growing amazement. No one had ever seen anything like this. The human should have died in the first seconds. Instead, he was still standing, still fighting, his body covered in cuts and bruises, but his eyes still burning with determination. Gorath was breathing hard. Theron were powerful, but they were built for quick, decisive victories. Prolonged fights exhausted them, and this human, this impossible little creature, simply would not stop. "What are you?" Gorath panted. Do-hyun spat blood onto the arena floor. His ribs were cracked. One eye was swelling shut. Every breath was agony. "Human," he said. He charged. It was not a smart attack. It was not elegant or tactical. It was a desperate, angry rush, the kind of attack his teachers had warned him never to make. But it was also the most human thing he could do. When everything else failed, when all hope was lost, humans did not give up. They went forward. They kept fighting. Gorath swung his blades. One of them caught Do-hyun's shoulder, cutting deep. Blood sprayed across the arena floor. But Do-hyun did not stop. He crashed into Gorath's chest, wrapped his arms around the Theron's midsection, and drove forward with every ounce of strength he had left. Gorath stumbled. The crowd leaped to their feet. Gorath fell backward, his massive body hitting the arena floor with a thunderous impact. Do-hyun fell with him, landing on top of the Theron's chest. His blood dripped onto Gorath's face. His arms trembled with exhaustion, but he pulled back his fist and aimed for Gorath's throat. "Yield," he gasped. Gorath stared up at him. For a long moment, neither moved. The arena was completely silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly, Gorath began to laugh. It started as a rumble deep in his chest, then grew into a booming sound that filled the arena. He laughed and laughed, his forearms falling limp at his sides. "I yield," he said finally, still chuckling. "I yield, human. You have won." The crowd erupted. Cheers and shouts filled the air. Beings stamped their feet, clapped their hands, roared their approval. Even those who had come hoping to see Do-hyun die were cheering now. They had witnessed something impossible, something legendary. Do-yun tried to stand, but his legs gave out. He collapsed onto the arena floor, the world spinning around him. But he was smiling. He was still alive. He heard footsteps running toward him. Then Sora was there, falling to her knees beside him, tears streaming down her silver face. "You did it," she whispered. "You impossible, wonderful, crazy human. You did it." "Told you," Do-hyun managed. "Humans don't know when to quit." She laughed and cried at the same time, pulling his broken body into her arms. Around them, the crowd continued to roar. Yuri, Hana, and Mina were pushing through the masses, their faces filled with shock and joy and 100 other emotions. But Do-hyun barely noticed. He was looking at Sora, at her beautiful violet eyes, at the smile that had become his whole world. "Sora," he whispered. "Yes? I think I need a doctor." She laughed again, a sound like music, like bells, like everything good in the universe. "You'll be fine," she promised. "I'll make sure of it." And as the crowd celebrated around them, as history was made in the heart of the orbital station, Do-hyun closed his eyes and let himself rest. He had done what he came to do. He had shown the galaxy what humans were made of. Do-hyun woke slowly, like rising from deep water. Everything hurt. His shoulder throbbed where Gorath's blade had cut him. His ribs ached with every breath. His head pounded, and his left eye was swollen nearly shut. But he was alive. That was something. He was lying in a medical bay, surrounded by machines that hummed and beeped. The technology here was far beyond anything on Earth. Devices floated in the air around him, scanning his injuries and delivering treatments he could not begin to understand. He felt warmth spreading through his body as broken bones began to knit and torn flesh started to heal. Sitting beside his bed, her hand wrapped around his, was Sora. She looked exhausted. Her silver skin was pale, and there were dark circles under her violet eyes. She had been crying recently, he could tell. But when she saw him wake, her face lit up with a smile so bright it made all the pain worth it. "You're awake," she breathed. "How long?" His voice came out as a croak. 2 days. The doctor said you should have died. Your injuries were—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "They kept saying it was impossible. A human body shouldn't have been able to take that much damage and keep going." "Humans are stubborn," Do-hyun managed. "I know." She squeezed his hand. "I've noticed." The door to the medical bay opened, and 3 familiar figures entered. Yuri led the way, followed by Hana and Mina. They looked different somehow. Less proud, less certain, more human in a way, though that seemed like a strange thing to think. Yuri stopped at the foot of his bed and stood there for a long moment, her golden eyes fixed on his face. "I was wrong about you," she said finally. "About everything. About your species. About what matters." She took a deep breath. "I judged you by your biology instead of your character. That was foolish and cruel. I'm sorry." Do-hyun nodded. "Apology accepted." Hana stepped forward next. "You saved me from the Korvax. You nearly died for a woman who had treated you terribly. I don't understand why you would do that. But I'm grateful." She bowed slightly, a gesture of respect on her world. "Thank you, Park Do-hyun." "You're welcome." Mina hung back, fidgeting nervously. She had always been the quietest of the mockers, laughing along rather than leading. Now she looked genuinely ashamed. "I'm sorry too," she said softly. "I just went along with what my sister said. I should have thought for myself. I should have seen who you really were." Do-hyun smiled, though it hurt his face. "It's okay. We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them." The sisters exchanged glances. Then Yuri nodded once, turned and led her siblings out of the room. They had said what they needed to say. The rest would come later. Sora waited until they were gone, then leaned close and kissed Do-hyun's forehead. "They really have changed," she said. "The whole station is talking about it. About you. About what you did." "What are they saying?" Sora's smile grew. "They're saying that humans are terrifying, that your species doesn't know when to surrender, that you'll keep fighting when any other being would have given up long ago." She paused. "They're also saying that you're kind, that you help people who were cruel to you, that you stood up for the weak even when it could have gotten you killed." She stroked his hair gently. They're saying that humanity might be worth watching after all. Over the next few weeks, as Do-hyun recovered, the changes became impossible to ignore. Delegates who had once ignored him now sought him out. They wanted to talk, to learn more about Earth and its people. Some were curious, some were respectful, a few were even genuinely friendly. Earth's status in the galactic community shifted, slowly at first, then faster as the story spread. The human who had faced a Theran champion with his bare fists. The human who had refused to fall. The human who had shown the galaxy something new. Even Gorath sought him out before leaving the station. The Theran warrior approached Do-hyun in the observation deck one evening, his massive form blocking out the stars. "Human," he said. Do-hyun tensed, but Gorath raised a hand in peace. "I came to speak, not fight. I wanted to tell you something." "What's that?" Gorath was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "In all my years of combat, I have never faced an opponent like you. You were weaker, smaller, slower. You had no weapons. By all logic, I should have killed you in seconds. But you would not fall. You kept getting up. Every time I knocked you down, you rose again." He shook his head slowly. "I finally understand what makes your species dangerous. It is not your strength or your technology. It is your refusal to accept defeat. You simply do not know how to give up." Do-hyun nodded. "That's how we survived on Earth. That's how we'll survive out here." Gorath extended one of his massive hands. After a moment, Do-hyun reached out and gripped it. The Theran's skin was rough like stone, but his grip was gentle. "I hope our species can be allies someday," Gorath said. "The galaxy could use more beings like you." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Do-hyun alone with the stars. The day came when Do-hyun's assignment on the station ended. 6 months had passed, and Earth was sending him home. But he was not going alone. Sora stood beside him at the shuttle dock, a single bag over her shoulder. She had applied to become a Valari cultural ambassador to Earth, and her request had been approved. She was coming with him. Her sisters had come to say goodbye. Yuri embraced her tightly, whispering something in Valari that Do-hyun politely pretended not to hear. Hana and Mina hugged her next, their eyes wet with tears. "Take care of yourself," Yuri told her, "and take care of him. He's stronger than he looks, but even he needs someone to watch over him." "I will," Sora promised. Then she turned to Do-hyun and took his hand. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready." They boarded the shuttle together. As it lifted off and left the station behind, Sora pressed her face to the window, watching the stars stream past. "Your world is so far away," she murmured. "So small and blue and fragile." "It's not much," Do-hyun admitted. "We're still learning, still growing. We've made a lot of mistakes. But you keep trying. Always." She turned to him, her violet eyes shining. "That's why I love you, Park Do-hyun. Not because you're strong, not because you're brave, because you never stop trying. You never stop believing that things can be better." He pulled her close and held her as the shuttle carried them toward Earth. Through the window, he could see his home planet growing larger, its blue oceans and green continents becoming clearer by the minute. "It's beautiful," Sora whispered. "Wait until you try the food," Do-hyun said. She laughed, and the sound filled the shuttle with warmth. Behind them, the station grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among millions. But the story of what had happened there was already spreading across the galaxy, passed from species to species, world to world. "The humans are here now," the story said. "They're small and fragile, and they don't live very long. But they share their blankets in the cold. They stand up for others when they're afraid. They fight when they should fall and rise when they should stay down. Humanity is not to be laughed at. Not anymore." And somewhere among all those distant stars, the galaxy began to take notice of the strange little species from a small blue world. They were new. They were different. They were worth watching. Perhaps in time, they might even be worth knowing. The story of Park Do-hyun and the Valari sisters became a legend, told in stations and ships across the cosmos. It was a simple story, really. A story about kindness and courage, about standing up for what was right, about love that crossed the boundaries of worlds and species. But then again, the best stories always are. And this one, like all the best human stories, ended exactly as it should. Not with fireworks or fanfare, but with two people sitting together, watching the stars, ready to face whatever came next. Together,